Okay, so let us begin. Part 2 of the triptych that we're looking at. We looked at part 1, even though it was our third class. Today's our fourth class. We laid the foundation. We talked about an intro to everything, okay, also laying a foundation. And then last time we looked at the beginning of John Paul's triptych and understanding the totality of the human person. That's the idea. We're trying to get to the understanding the totality of who man is, all right? And so the second part is as it is now. And if you know your glory be, as it was in the beginning, we talked about that last time, is now. And next time, we're going to look at and ever shall be, right? The glory be destiny. But before you get to Easter Sunday, you got to go through Good Friday, if you know what I'm talking about. Anything has this, right? Our lives are full of agonies and ecstasies. Sometimes more agonies, sometimes more ecstasies, but they're always full of that. Never are you going to have just so much agony or only agony, right? You're going to have ecstasies as well. And those are important because it speaks our song, right? The song of humanity, the song of how we're created. That's kind of what we're trying to get into here. The woman saw that the fruit was good to eat and pleasing to the eye and desirable. She took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband, and he ate. In other translations, who was standing right there, right? By the fact that the woman gives it to her husband, it's not like he's gone. He's out, in the garden, hanging out with the animals again. No, gone are those days. He found his woman. He's with her, right? But he doesn't do what he was meant to do. Remember that slide, that theography that we looked at last time, the task of Adam. He was meant to guard and to protect the garden and Eve, right? That was his main task. His main task was to guard and to protect. And here he's letting a serpent, right, enter in. He's letting the evil one who has already fallen, right, and wants some company, to disarm, and he goes after the woman, right? And then the man does nothing about it, right? There's a great book, I forgot the author's name. It's called The Silence of Adam, and it's about passivity of men, especially recently. The passivity of men within the church especially. Church thing, it's for the women, go up to the front, men are in the back, smoking, do whatever, it's not really for me, right? That's more for the women. They're more spiritual by nature, us men, right? That's a big fallacy, and it's part of the silence. It's part of the very first idea of the fall, right? Of the silence of Adam, who doesn't guard and doesn't protect, right? And we see that. We've seen that a lot within our church. If our church is feminized, and we've heard that a lot, right, that word, well, perhaps it is because, right, the men haven't stepped up to what it's supposed to be, right? Because in no way, the church is supposed to be complementary, just like human nature is complementary. Just like everything. You have the sun, you have the moon. You have the sea, you have the rocks. You have salt, you have pepper. Everything about what we do is complementary. We need the male, we need the female aspect, right? If we don't have it, something's lopsided. Yeah, something's lopsided. So that's what we're entering into that now, right here in this moment. And just the genius of Michelangelo, this is Michelangelo's painting, if you didn't know. He reads into Scripture. He reads into everything. He reads it so well, and every character and everything has so much weight, and there's a lot going into this. One thing, if I will point out, and just quickly, actually no, got to move on. I'm going to refrain. Sorry, we need to move on. Okay, one thing I do want to point out is the difference at the very sudden. 70 years did not go by, but for Michelangelo it did. Eve looks as if she's 25, and all of a sudden, from that glimpse, from that moment of taking the fruit, right, you have the 75-old woman, right? What is he saying? Death kills, death destroys. To give oneself to evil, right, sin, is to lose one's human essence. Just as virtue can raise a person above human nature, vice can lower those whom it has seduced from the condition of men beneath human nature, right? Kind of what we talked about last time. Rise to day 7 or stay on the level of day 6 with the animals, right? We lose our human nature, our essence of how we're created. Michelangelo portrays that externally. Where are you? What have you done? Right? I love this image. I believe Anna Leah Merritt. Wonder if there's any family connection there in the back. Beautiful image of Eve, right? This shame that she's taken under. She realizes it. She knows. Yeah? It's more than embarrassment at this point. She knows something's not right. Where are you? Where have you? What have you done? God's doing the normal stroll through the garden. Where did you go, Eve? Why are you hiding from me? What's with these fig leaves? We've never done that before. Who told you about that? Right? We hide ourselves from God. Never hides. God never hides. Right? We are the ones that we hide ourselves, and God is always here, present. We're going to look at a few things later on that kind of depict that. From Peter Craig, excellent podcast. If you can get it, it's like 19 minutes, called Identity. Excellent. If we are made in the image of God, we are remote, creaturely, finite participation in the divine nature. Basically, we partake in God's nature, which is divine. We are something like God. What is God? The name of a person. So we are persons. Now, if overcome by vice, what do you lose? You lose the divine image. You lose the holiest thing of all, your personality. Yeah. It's this losing of the essence, right? The whole kind of concept that I was trying to form last week, the hermeneutics of the gift that we talked about, is everything is gift. Everything is, the only proper response is gratitude. Kind of to explain that a little bit better, there was an image I kind of forgot to tell. St. Francis, feast day tomorrow. Beautiful, great saint of our time. There is no coincidence why Pope Francis took his name. He's definitely one we need to pray to and imitate and contemplate because of his simplicity, his poverty, his goodness. There's a story of him walking by and just a simple story, walking by in the forest, and he sees two sticks in the form of a cross. And he stops and he praises God. That's it. Everything led him to praise God. That was his motto. That was his everything about him was praising God constantly, right? We go outside, the weather's good, praise God. Oh, thank you, Jesus. Really? Most people would just, it's normal. You know, the weather's changing, the weather's breaking, it's not a big deal. The materialist, the rationalist, right, they see things this way. But no, everything's gift. Everything is gift, right? What happens when we lose this gift? A piece of ourself is lost, right? What is holiness but wholeness, right? It's being whole. It's what we're created to be, right? When we fall, when we sin, it's nixed, right? It's chipped off little by little. Ugh. Take a good look, people. Take a good look. It's hard. It's hard to look at. But this is the face of sin. Tolkien, and if you don't know, this is Gollum, right, from Lord of the Rings. Hey, what happened? Tolkien nailed it, right? Nailed it with this creature. You know, it's the Hobbit. Really, Hobbit is kind of man. I don't know too much like Tolkien theology of Lord of the Rings. It's, I would like to study more of it. But this part, if you know the story, he was a normal guy, right? He was a hobbit. He had friends. He went canoeing. And that scene where he's out with another friend, right, in union with this other guy, forming community, happy, go lucky, hobbit, like they're supposed to be. And they're fishing, right? They're doing something very normal, very human, very good, what we're supposed to do as human beings, right? And he sees this ring, right? And what happens? The other guy goes, he reaches for it. And it's not, hey, that's a cool ring, good job, good, that's great. It's I'm jealous. It's, I want that. It's possession. You have something I don't, I want it enough to kill. And what does that do? It chips away from him. And little by little, he loses his human essence. Right? Man has forgotten what it means to be man and has turned inside himself. He is alienated from original love and thus discovers selfishness as his true happiness. Yeah? That taking the ring, taking the possession, this jealousy factor that it is never taken care of, right? It turns into this monster, right? It turns into something that is animalistic. That is not what we're created to be, right? We're created to love, to be happy, right? The fact that we get jealous, or the whole, that's good for you type of thing, or bless your heart type deal, like whatever, like I got an A on my exam, oh, good for you, yeah, failed it, like it's a fruit of the original sin, right? It's a fruit that we are following because we're supposed to be happy for others. We're supposed to look at the success of others and say, wow, awesome, great, right? But we don't. Why? Yeah? Fallen humanity. Selfishness as true happiness. Selfishness, right? As opposed to forgetfulness, as opposed to the gift of self that we talked about last time, right? That in giving we receive, right? The beautiful St. Francis prayer. Your heart was puffed up with pride. Because of your beauty, you have corrupted your wisdom owing to your splendor, right? Pride, root sin. If you don't know the root sins, there are 3. Pride, vanity, sensuality. All other sins come from these. And we all have them. We all have pride, vanity, sensuality. One is dominant, right? And it's important to know what sin is most dominant. What's the antidote to that? Humility, right? It's being humble. Yeah, but that's important to know. Pride, vanity, sensuality. Okay, and if we react in certain ways, it's because of this. We've talked about it before. I've given blurbs to it here and there. It's the infinite ache. It's the ache in the heart. If we react in a certain way, it's because we're longing for something. When man fell, he lost himself. He lost a version of himself. He lost a side of himself, right? Great song by Bastille, Flaws, if you've ever... right? There's a hole in my soul, yeah? I can feel it. Can you feel it, right? F-I-L-L. God-sized hole, right? And the human person, the secular ban, right? Theology of the body subjectively knows it. They know it, right? This ache affects all of us. Oh, by the way, this is in your books. The Scream, right? Edvard Munch. The Scream, painted in 1895, sold for $119.9 million, becoming the world's most expensive work of art ever to sell at auction at a time. Why? Why is this sold for so much if it's not hitting on something very human, if it's not hitting on a deep, fundamental level that hits a lot of people? Because they've been there and they know it, right? Wow. I could have drew that. That much money. Wow, the Scream. This is from Father Cantalamessa. He is the papal preacher, so he preaches to the Pope, no big deal. On the Scream, he says this: "This seems to me the best description of the situation of human beings in modern times, who, having forgotten the cry of the kerygma," the holy, holy, holy that we say in the Mass, right? It's the kerygma. That is full of meaning, find themselves having to scream their existential anguish in a vacuum, right? When we forget the kerygma, the holy, holy, that we're part of something greater, that we're part of God's work, greatest of the pinnacle of God's creation. When we forget that, sure, we scream. We scream inside this existential anguish. Benedict, we do not know the thing towards which we feel driven. We cannot stop reaching out for it, and yet we know that all we can experience or accomplish is not what we yearn for. Wow. This unknown thing is the true hope which drives us. The term eternal life is intended to give a name to this known unknown. Love that, Benedict. Most people write in sentences. Benedict writes in paragraphs. That's what they say about him. This known unknown. We all know it, but we don't know it. Yeah? And it's the hope, right? We do coin a word for it, right? And us Catholics, Christians, we know it's eternal life, right? And we live for it. We live for that. Okay? But certainly there was an Eden on this very unhappy earth. We all long for it, and we are constantly glimpsing it. Our whole nature, at its best and least corrupted, its gentlest and most humane, is soaked with a sense of exile, with the pipe, right? Just contemplating this stuff. the ache, the heart. We know that we're called to something greater, right? It's what he would try to create in his works. C.S. Lewis, the same. It was when I was the happiest that I longed the most. The sweetest thing in all my life has been the longing. Wow. To find the place where all the beauty came from. Right? The greatest time in my life was the longing, the time I longed for the most, right? When I leaned the car over and stopped and bawled and cried and let it all out. Sweetest. That's a sweet time, right? When we can do that, right? Because what does it do? It implies a forgetfulness, right? It implies a vulnerability. I give myself over. I'm going to stop, being in control, right? I'm going to let myself go. I'm going to let you take, right? Let go and let God. Historical man, Christ appeals to the human heart. We're going to make it, I promise. Jesus Christ, the Redeemer of man, center of universe and of history, right? John Paul goes to Christ. This isn't his stuff. This is Christianity. This is the Gospels we're looking at. We're not looking at John Paul as author. He does it in an incredible way. I'm just mimicking it, right? But this is Christ, the Redeemer of man, that we're looking at here. Okay, he appeals to the human heart, right? And this is what we're getting at. Before we looked at the beginning, now we're looking at the heart. In the light of the Sermon on the Mount, adultery in the heart. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. Okay, just like Moses allowed you to divorce your wives. Okay, but it was because of the hardness of your heart that Moses allowed you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning, it was not so. Same concept here. You shall not commit adultery. Okay, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in her heart, his heart. Yet he goes beyond, right? The 10 Commandments, we talked about that before as the ethic, right? It is something good, right? We need the 10 Commandments. It's a starting point, but it's not an end as far as Christ is concerned, right? He's saying we need to go further. We need to go to ethos, internalizing the law, right? That the law is not something that puts us down, right? The law is something that is freeing, right? Ethos. One is good, the other is better, yeah? And that's what we're getting at here. One is good. It's good, yeah. Don't commit adultery. That's pretty good. Okay, yeah, because it's one of the 10 Commandments and all. But I say to you, whoever looks at a woman lustfully, right, commits adultery in his heart. Also a sin. We're going better. We're going beyond. This is the gospel. This is what we know, right? I don't know what the Jews believe. I hope they don't stay there, though. I hope they don't stay at the 10 Commandments, right? We have to go further. If they do, come be Christian, because we're doing this, right? One is good, one is better. If we approach the world and say, I just want to be a good person, join the crowd, because there's plenty of good people out there. God isn't asking us to be good, right? He's asking us to be holy. He's asking us to be saints. He's asking us to live out to the perfection of our humanity, which is sanctity. It's all the same. We have to change our mentality to understand that morality is equated with humanity. Yeah? If we coin morality with religious theology, whatever, okay, because it is. But it is humanity. And if it corresponds phenomenology, right? I pitched this out to you. Do you agree? Do you agree? Is this of your own experience? If so, then what does that say? We have to equate morality with humanity, with how we're created. And if we live those things out, if we live morality to its perfection, then we're created. This is something that links us, our crazy conservative views that are so strict. Nah, it links us to humanity because it is human, right? It's the perfect. Does that make sense? I find this something that we haven't fully understood, right? Even within the church, we don't talk about humanity enough. But it is humanity. What is Catholic but universal? It's for everyone, yeah? So that's what Christ is doing with the ethos, right? Internalizing the law, making it our own, living it out. Again, the heart is man's deep interior self where he experiences the forces of good and evil, fighting it. This is concupiscence, yeah? We have aches, we have desires to go against our compulses, right? Our passions, right? Okay, next we're going to go into 3 ruptures This is going to end fallen man, then we're going to look at redeemed man. Okay, can do it. 3 ruptures: shame, fear, conflict. Yeah, 3 things that have happened to man. Juxtapose that with original man, what we looked at with original man, right? With the rupture between the human person, solitude, right? Alone with himself was Adam, right? Rupture between man and God is fear, yeah? It cast a fear on God as Father. Rupture, right, between man and God, Adam alone with God, yeah? And then rupture in human relationships, Adam alone with the animals. Well, Adam with Eve, right? With that original unity that we talked about. Conflict. Okay. Shame. Here begins the battlefield between love and lust. It's actually a quote from John Paul, right? He says that, battlefield. He uses that word. There's a battle going on. It's raging. It's part of spiritual warfare, right? Between love and lust, right? Between good and evil. Same thing, right? This is taken from Michelangelo's Last Judgment, right? Of this this guy who just knows it. Yeah, you see it in his face. He knows that he belongs where these demons are taking him. He knows that he lived a life that isn't worthy of the glory of God. They even say that with purgatory, one of the reasons why there's purgatory is that you see a glimpse of heaven and you're like, no, I can't handle that. I need to go get purified for a time before I can walk into that goodness, that amazingness. Like it's too good to be true type thing, right? We need purgatory, yeah. Wow. And so he knows, right? It's this type of shame. But again, it's shame that's not just, I'm embarrassed. It's a piece of me has been taken away and I don't know who I am. My identity, my personality is lost, right? My human essence, I don't know who I am. Therefore, I can go to a place that I don't know about, right? Because we know about heaven. It's in our hearts, right? We don't know about hell. We shouldn't know about that. When we experience sin, we get a glimpse of it. Yeah. But we're not created for it. From Mary Healy, excellent book, Men and Women Are from Eden. And actually, these 3 are taken from her book. I'm stealing them, sorry. Should have made that more clear. The 3 ruptures are from her. Shame experienced by the first couple was the result of the rupture in the unity of the spirit and body, more than mere embarrassment, right? It is a proof, it was a profound distress at the awareness of something contrary to their dignity as persons. Since the fall, our inclination to cover certain parts of the body is a protection against the misuse of the body due to concupiscence, right? Why do we cover those? Not because they're bad, tainted, dirty, evil. Huh? No, but because they're good, they're true, they're beautiful, they're holy, right? And so we reverence that. Yeah. If you know this face, just escaped me. Ted Bundy, right? He abused sexually and raped 30 girls and murdered them, 30 girls, right? And he gives it all to porn. There's an interview before he dies, and he says he grew up in a normal family. Both parents were there, completely not a lot of pathology that was supposed to happen, right? Normal family. And he said porn just attacked him internally, right? And it led him to do animalistic things, right? Bizarre, monstrous things. We're now tempted to view the body not as a transparent expression of the inner life, but as an object to be used for our own selfish gratification, right? Maybe this applies more for men. Maybe for women, we can use men, right, as emotional gratification, right? It's both, yeah? We now tend towards that, right? And again, that look is just, it's kind of that same idea of shame, right? Cain kills Abel, right? The first witness of a murder. And if you look, Adam, this is William Blake. I don't know if anybody is familiar with this. Adam looks very similar to Cain, right? They're the same blood, and it's almost as if I know that face. Adam is saying, I know that face. I remember doing that. I remember when I fell, and I did the same thing he's doing, and now he's repeating me. Generational, right? It's generational. What are we doing to stop it? What are we doing to stop the madness of our fathers, right? Of those who have gone before us, yeah? We need to create generational development. Yeah. But this is the downward spiral, right? Anybody see anything else? I'm going to open it up. Yeah.
Do you have an explanation of why he has one foot in the grave? Is that intentional? Like candidate that one?
Yeah, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine on that one. It looks as if he's running. I mean, clearly, right? And so it kind of looks like he's just. But yeah, as if he's losing a bit of himself, maybe, right? One foot's in the grave. He's leaving that. Yeah, it kind of looks like the sun he's on fire due to the sun, right? Yeah. Anything else? But I saw the resemblance in Adam and Cain. I was like, wow, right? He sees that in himself. Shame, man. Finding himself in the midst of the battlefield, man has to struggle to do what is right, and it is a great cost to himself, and aided by God's grace that he succeeds in achieving his own inner integrity. This is from the Catechism. The Catechism, right? Oh, the Catechism just wants us to be human. It sees the ideal. Church fathers, masterminds. Think of Benedict. Think of the greats, the doctors of the church, from Augustine and back, and Aquinas, and so many. We have such a rich faith. It's not 200 years old, right? It's so rich. Yeah. And the church wants us so. The church is a mother. It's a safe haven, right? If we can't trust anything, we can trust the church, because the church is of God, right? It's made with people with imperfections, sure, okay, but the church is of God, right? It was created by God. It is God's. Yeah. John the 23rd. At the end of the day, he would work until midnight every night. He'd work until midnight, and then he would drop his pen, whatever he did, and would go to bed saying, Lord, I did the best I can. The rest is in your hands, because this is your church. And whatever, you do the rest, This is your church. Like, I'm done. I'm going to sleep. Right? We know this phrase from St. Paul. I can will what is right, but I cannot do it. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want to do is what I do. Yeah? The conflict, right? St. Paul struggled with it. And he was a saint, and he did it. Well, if St. Paul, shoot, what good is me trying if the apostle himself couldn't make it? But he did do it, right? He says here, I can will what is right, but I cannot do it. Sure, he did it. Sure, he did. He struggled. He fought constantly, right? And he did it all out of remorse for what he did, right? For his past life. He was making that up. Yeah. From John Paul, the shame from sin creates a fundamental disquiet in the whole of human existence. The body is not subject to the spirit as in the state of original innocence, but carries within itself a constant hotbed of resistance against the spirit and threatens in some way man's unity as a person. Again, kind of what Mary Healy was saying, that it's not just embarrassment, but it's a constant hotbed of resistance. When we sin, why do we get upset with ourselves after sin, right? Why does Eve cover herself, right? The shame says something. It speaks volumes, right? About that. Okay, second, fear, right? The rupture between man and God. Tormented by guilt, they now tend to fear God as a distant lawgiver and harsh judge. Where are you? Where did you go? You're in the garden. We talked yesterday. Did I say something bad? Did I offend you? Right? They run from God. Yeah? And they now see him as a harsh judge. Right? Distant lawgiver. Yeah? Javert character, if you're familiar with Les Mis. Great story, beautiful story of humanity, of love, right? You see all these depictions of love for money, love for a nation, love for people, love for freedom, love for a person, right? All these different ways of loving in that movie. It's just incredible. 5 stars. And this character of Javert, right? It's very much of a Jansenistic mentality, which is interesting because it's in Paris, and that's where Jansenism started, in France. And I have to earn my way, right? Stoic. I can't receive anything as a gift. I have to, and he beats himself over and over to the point of suicide, right? He can't perfect himself, right? He's not allowing God to come in and work in himself, right? He has to do it himself. And then he applies that mercilessness that he has on himself, right, towards others, right? He's no longer merciful towards others, right? He he can't be merciful because he's never received mercy. Right? When man conceives God as a tyrant, he is goaded to do battle against his maker so as not to be enslaved. Yeah? Scott Hahn, a great Christian theologian, right, once was asked to go into a debate with a Muslim expert of the Quran. And they're like, really? You want to do a debate? Like, that's never happened. That's unprecedented. Like, this will be huge. I would love to. But I want to make some ground rules. If we do this, I want to make some ground rules. I'd like to meet with them first and establish some things. And so they met for breakfast. And anytime Scott Hahn brought up the idea of God as Father, I think he brought it up a few times, God as Father. He kept saying that. Eventually, the third or fourth time, the Muslim man slammed his fist on the table and said, enough. Stop calling God Father. He is not Father. He is tyrant. I am his slave. It is as if I am the dog and he is my master. That is how we see God. And Scott Hahn's like, well, we can't go any further. We can't talk. You have a mental block, right? There is a mental block, and we can't debate at that point, right? I mean, if there's anything diabolical, no, in no way should we see God as a tyrant. That is the exact opposite, right? Because what is that? Well, then it makes us slaves, right? It makes us slaves to this thing we'll never know, nor do we love, right? My relationship with God is not the policeman. I'm afraid of the police. Every time I see a police, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to be on my best behavior. Do I love the police? No, I'm not doing it out of love. I'm doing it so I don't get caught. I'm doing it so I don't get a fine, you know? God is not that. And if we perceive God as that, well, then sure, we'll believe anything to get out of this terrible system, right? And have our 99 virgins at the end of our life or whatever, you know? And if that means slamming something into a skyscraper, I'll do it. Get me out of these chains. Because that's not freedom. Yeah. John Paul II says, at the root of the fall was the failure to grasp the essence of God's fatherhood. There it is. That's at the root of the fall. The source, right? If there's anything that we know about that, it's at the root of the fall is the failure to grasp the essence of God as Father, right? Beautiful picture of Rembrandt's prodigal son, right? I had a laser, and I don't know where it went. But a few things about this painting, it's interesting, right? We have the mother in the background, slight dim image you can barely see, but that's the mother in the background. Here are kind of slaves according to how they're dressed. And we have this guy with the cloak, probably the older son because it's the same cloak as the father. And you see how the three of them are higher than the son, right? Even higher than the father, right? Here the father is stooping down, right, to care for his son. And this is so fascinating, the picture or the image of the prodigal son. So the custom was if a person were to do that and say, you know what, I want my inheritance, you're better to me dead than alive, give me my stuff, and leaves like that, and the town finds out, which the town would have found out about it, the town has the right to kill that person if he ever tries to come back. If that kid tries to come back, the town has the right to kill. In the main square, we'll do it. Unless the family comes out and stops. And so what is God the Father, right? What is this father doing? But out on the porch every day waiting, right? Because he knows what the town will do, right? And he's waiting to catch him before the town does, right? And when he does, he had to lift up his tunic. And to lift up his tunic back in the day is if that would be modern day translation, like to go to a nice gala dinner, tuxedo, nice dress, and eat with your fingers, eat with your hands. Like, you just don't do it. Like, please, that's embarrassing. That is what it's like for a man of his prestige, his age, to lift up his tunic, to show his ankles and run, right? And he does it. And he beats the town, right? And he embraces the son. Beautiful kind of mind of Rembrandt going into this image is, if you look at the face closely, it's like a fetus. It's the face of this newborn baby, right? Even in the womb. Why? Because it's this new birth, right, that he's having. He's becoming a new person, a new man, right? He realizes his sin, and he presses his head to his father's heart, right? This heart that is not hard, this heart that is merciful, yeah? And then if you look closely at the hands, one is feminine, the other is masculine, right? The complementarity, right? The beauty of God as feminine and as masculine, right? We have the paternity, maybe some justice, some firmness, and then you have the mercy, right? And this devotion, right? I mean, it's not a coincidence that this devotion is popular nowadays, right? It's here for a reason. I trust in you, and if I trust, I see you as Father. If I trust, I love, right? Love banishes all fear, yeah? Last one, conflict, rupture between human relationships. The man said, the woman whom you gave to me to be with me, she gave me the fruit of the tree and I ate it. Then the Lord God said to the woman, what is this that you have done? The woman said, the serpent beguiled me and I ate it, right? He did it. She did it. Yeah. Wasn't me, right? Conflict. From Mary Healy again. God's plan for human beings was that we would experience union in the fullest sense. But the first sin caused disunity, not only between man and God, but among human beings, between human beings and the created world, and even within the human being between spirit and body. A disunity, right? Whenever we see the devil, right? Division, seeking to divide. This conflict, right? And again, Les Mis, right? The character of Fantine, who goes through this just brokenness constantly over and over, and then belts out this incredible song from the heart. You know, and I was thinking, it was at this point in the movie, I was like, really? 3 hours of singing, like I'm not going to be able to handle it. But then when Fantine gets up there, I was like, that's why they're singing. When you express in song, you're doing something to these beautiful words, these beautiful lyrics that words just talking doesn't give justice to, right? When you sing it, the heart comes out and the emotion, and I dreamed a dream, right? It's not supposed to be this way. It wasn't supposed to be this way. I was supposed to live a beautiful life. I was supposed to have these beautiful things, and that's good, right? And what happened, right? Conflict, yeah? Human relationships, the fall. Yeah. Divorce is hell. It's a living death. In fact, it's worse than death, because at least death is something natural. There is nothing natural about divorce, right? Excellent podcast. Father John Ricardo, The Four Goods of Marriage. Great podcast, about 45 minutes. Father John Ricardo doing excellent work out there. He's at a parish somewhere. Michigan, I think. Excellent, but Detroit, thank you. Death is something natural, but divorce, no. Divorce it's not anything natural, right? And then you got to live with the person. You got to see the person, so that death depends primarily on who man will be for woman and who woman will be for man. Paraphrasing what we mentioned before, right? It all depends on that. Okay, second part, doing well, yes. Redeemed man, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. What do? There's a lot of darkness going on, Ryan. Can we talk about something beautiful? Yes. Redemption, concupiscence. Okay, it comes from sin, inclines to sin, but as the Catechism says, it is itself not a sin, right? It's not a sin to be tempted. It's what you do with that, right? It cannot harm those who do not consent to it. Do not be afraid of sin, right? We shouldn't be afraid of the world, big bad world out there. People are scary. No, right? We take it on. Knowing the truth, knowing the reality, knowing of what people need to know, right? And we give that. There's this guy who he saw a cracked mirror, and he saw a sun rise through it, or sunset or something, and he took a picture of it, and he goes now, like the way he makes a living, I guess, is going around the country having these beautiful sunrises and sunsets through cracked mirrors, right? If you've never seen that before, just look at Brittany's or Courtney's phones. You can, you'll find a shattered glass, right? Sorry, Courtney. I couldn't help myself. I'm looking at everything. Okay, but what's the idea? Through the fragment, there's still beauty. If we look at the whole, that's actually something very beautiful and something very modern and artistic, and people buy this stuff. Like there's still beauty here, right? Just because it's fragmented, just because we've fallen, right, doesn't take away the beauty, yeah, of who we are. We're still beautiful. We can't focus on the crack, right? What happens if we do and we put our finger next to it? You'll cut yourself because it's glass, right? We shouldn't do that. Look at it. It's still beautiful. Good job, Courtney. You can still keep your... From Father Cantalamessa, papal preacher. This is a depiction of what happens when we shift from the uncreated beauty of God to the multiplicity of beautiful things in the world. The beauty that we experience in the world is fragmented. Sin begins with respect to beauty, when one forgets the whole and becomes attached to the fragment. Yeah. We can't forget the whole. We can't forget original man, right? And kind of what I was trying to explain last time, you'll understand original man better after experiencing this, right? After going through this historical man, yeah? We can't forget what we learned. We can't forget the hermeneutics of the gift, right? That everything is gift. When we forget about that, well, we start doing some amazing things because we become the gift for everyone. And how can the world ever happen without me? Like, no. A Mumford & Sons action, right? So come out of your cave, wow, okay, walking on your hands, right? And then see the world hanging upside down. You can understand dependence when you know the maker's hand, as opposed to independent. Because I need freedom now. Lord knows it. They ache, right? I need to know how to live my life as it's meant to be. Wow, I know this isn't right. Teach me. Original man. Glorified man. Wow. And I'll find strength in pain, and I will change my ways, and I'll know my name, identity, as it's called again. I'll know who I am. Stuff has to sink. Mumford & Sons. Good stuff. And then the... Eros and agape. Okay. The statue of chastity. Go into St. Peter's Basilica. To the right away, you see the Pietà, beautiful altar dedicated to Mary. Incredible. Pietà. Next altar, to the left, right, our left of Mary, John Paul II's tomb. After that, the Eucharist chapel, right? John Paul saw at one point, I think in the 80s, he saw St. Peter's Basilica becoming too much like a museum and was like, we got to do something about this, and so created a chapel. And he dedicated a chapel altar to the Eucharist. And it's right there. And so John Paul is between the Eucharist and Mary. And then directly opposite John Paul's tomb, top, you see this statue of chastity. Little modesty, please, Vatican. My goodness. A little too much going on there, maybe. It's in a church. It's in the Vatican, for crying out. It's beautiful, right? It's beautiful, right? The human body is beautiful. What's going on here? She's taking chastity, the virtue of chastity, right? What is chastity? But taking this passionate unicorn, right? This tameless thing. We cannot tame it. It's a unicorn, right? She's taking it, and she's taking the rose, the lily, purity, right? All of what we know is good, true, and beautiful. And then our passions, right? Our eros. That's what it's called. Our eros, our passions, we need these things, right? Our ache. And it's unifying them, bringing them together. It's hard. Right? The raw material of everything that attracts us to what is good, true, and beautiful must be united to the moral values. Again, morality equated with humanity. If I'm human, I live out chastity. Right? True freedom is not liberty to indulge in our compassions, but liberation from our compulsions to indulge. John Paul.